Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Nick Talks. This episode's amazing guest is a lady who I know through LinkedIn, and we've been chatting for a while. And I've noticed she's one of the people who always seems to like my posts on LinkedIn, so I need to thank her for that. It's Suzanne Brogan. So first of all, welcome Suzanne to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on, Nick. I really appreciate it.
No, no, absolutely fine. You contacted me a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, saying, Nick, do you know my story? And is this a story you'd be interested in talking about on your podcast? You sent me a Daily Mail link, just obviously to make sure what you were saying was true, because, there's crazy people out there who can say anything, but you've obviously hit the papers. So I read your story, and straight away it was like, wow, this really happens. This was, we're going to get into it now, but I was thinking, this was your boss at work, and this is what he was doing. And like I say, it's been to court. There's a Daily Mail article that I'll put into the description of this video so people can go read the article as well. So tell me about your boss, ex-boss.
My former chairman was convicted of 2 counts of criminal damage when he was found guilty of painting bitch on my car the first time, and then a month later throwing red paint over it. I had to fight to get the convictions. The CPS didn't want to prosecute. I appealed against their decision twice, I believe. And then I was invited to a rape suite in Northampton General Hospital, where an interview was videoed and supplied to his defence. They decided I was telling the truth. And so they went ahead with the conviction. What I've subsequently learned is that he could and should have been charged with stalking. He could and should have been charged with harassment, intimidation as a Section 4 offence. He should and could have been charged with malicious communication, witness intimidation, and data protection breaches. Northamptonshire Police sent 5 officers to Market Harborough, where his business was, to search his home, to search his business, one to take him into custody. But when they got there, they discovered he was on holiday. I believe he was in the Dominican Republic. Knowing that the managing director of the company would have told him, I contacted solicitors to try and get an ex parte injunction. However, they quoted me £20,000 just to represent me with no guarantee of an injunction. So as a litigant in person, I attended the court and managed to get an ex parte injunction. And then when he appealed against it, I think that's the correct legal term, when he appeared before the court with his legal representation, he had to give the court an undertaking. But it's been nearly 10 years since what I believe to be stalking behaviour.
Because this all started in 2014.
It started in 2013. It's nearly 10. Yeah, an event happened that I won't go into detail on the 13th of May 2013.
Let's get into some of the backstory to this. So, who was you? What was you doing? Where was you working? What was your job? What was your relationship with your boss? Let's have some background to.
So, I started at the company, Wellcome Communications, in March of 2008. I started off we were a mobile phone and landline company. I've worked in the industry now for 27 years. I started off as an O2 Centre of Excellence manager. They gave us small accounts for us to look after. I was then made the retentions manager, and then I was promoted to sales manager. I was part of the senior management team. There were 2 camps very definitely in the business. There was Team Chris and the managing director, who I had actually put a grievance in about his bullying behaviour, not only to me but to my team. And that I was successful in. That grievance was upheld. It was quite a toxic environment. When I first started there in 2008, it was I think there were 17 members of staff. It was a nice company. I really respected Chris and his wife, Sue. I'd had a long relationship with them prior to going to work for them. And I took the role on the basis that I never, ever had to report into who became the managing director. He's now the chairman, Aidan Piper, because he was seen as a bit of a joke within the industry. I knew from other staff members on the team that he was a dreadful bully. And Chris agreed to that. I was never going to have to report into him. Sadly, I think it was the end of 2007, Chris's wife had a massive stroke while they were on holiday. And so when I went to work for him, he was working part-time, being her primary carer. When they went away, my husband and I, well, he was then my fiance, looked after their dog. I looked after Adam Stanton, one of his, I think it's his eldest son. I looked after his pets when he went on holiday. So we were friendly, but I wouldn't ever say we were friends. But I respected him. I really liked him, and I thought that was massively important. Then in 2013, in the summer of June time, well, actually, prior to that, I was asked if I was having an affair with the financial controller. I was really offended by that because my husband, who is now my husband, is absolutely beautiful. We've known each other since I was 14 years old and he was 17. So, you know, we've been together a long time. But then about 2 or 3 weeks after the HR lady, Lucy Barwick, asked me if I was having an affair, Colin, the financial controller, was arrested and sacked by the company, and allegations were made of fraud by misrepresentation. And Colin subsequently stood trial. In the October, I went into contract negotiations with the company, and I was asked if I had had any contact with Colin, and I confirmed I'd been in the Maldives until the Monday, and I confirmed I'd received a text message from Colin. They asked what it was about, and I said he wanted to speak to my husband, who is a recruiter. Obviously, he was out of work. His life had turned to a nasty place, and he wanted some help getting regular paid employment. But the question was loaded, and I realised that they were checking my personal mobile phone account to see who I was calling and texting. And I would have admitted it anyway. You know, I had got nothing to hide. They told everybody we weren't allowed to speak to Colin, and I said, as long as I'm not discussing the business, I know he'll contact me. And he did when I was on another holiday. And I went back in and told them straight away. And he said to me that he was innocent. He was going to prove it. They'd said that he hadn't had a stroke and that he'd made it up. So when the very first conversation I had with him after his termination, I said, if I find out you haven't had a stroke, I'll probably kill you myself. Not literally, but I would be so disappointed in him. And he sent me evidence that he had had a stroke. He sent me some of his medical notes. When they sacked Colin, I started checking my car, the boot of my company car, every night, because I thought the managing director would put a load of iPhones in. We used to joke about this. We had an iPhone that would go missing on a regular basis. It was the same IMEI every time, serial number. But we used to joke about it, but I wouldn't have put it past the managing director to put a load of iPhones in the boot of my car and accuse me of theft. So I checked my car every day. Anyway, fast forward a little bit. I gave evidence to Leicestershire Police that I didn't think Colin could be guilty because he had put checks and balances in place. So the crimes could not happen. He didn't access the bank account. He couldn't have just paid himself a large wedge of money, as far as I'm aware. And I also told Leicestershire Police that I believed they were accessing my personal mobile phone account to see who I was calling and texting. I was told that if the board of directors were doing that, it was a crime, and they urged me to give a statement, which I did. I met an amazing police officer, and I'm not the biggest fans of police officers, but I do give praise where it's due. PC Malcolm Roberts of Market Harborough Police. He applied for a court. O2 would not give the police the information, so he applied for a court order. Asked me to pop in and see him so he could filter the data properly. And there I saw the evidence that they indeed were accessing my personal mobile phone account on a regular basis. In the meantime, I'd put a complaint into O2, and they said they would move my account number, my mobile phone, to a new account number to prevent any access, whilst not admitting they had accessed my records. And they did that, but they failed to change the revenue share code. So even after they'd moved my account, they were still accessing my personal mobile phone account. I ended up paying, I think it was about £420 to port my number away from O2, as they would not assist me in any way. In fact, I think at one point, Ronan Dunn, who was the then CEO, had an email sent to me threatening to sue me if I carried on telling people, well done, Ronan, you never did. But as much as anything, I wanted to tell my story in the hope that I can help other victims or survivors of stalking understand that nobody's going to come and save you. You have to learn to save yourself. I learned self-defense. I learned to run. I went to boot camps to increase my strength. I learned to meditate because I was a bit of a high adrenaline junkie for a time, but I realized I wasn't learning to meditate or relax.
Am I right in saying this, what you've just described now with everything that went on at this company, was what created this relationship you had with your boss? So whatever was going on there, is this the reason why he held you responsible and blamed you and wanted to go after you?
I don't know. You would have to ask him that, really. But there was a number of events that it could be attributed to. And it could just be that he actually had an alter ego, that he called himself Dougie Brown. And when Dougie Brown was out, he would physically change his appearance. So he'd shave his head, he'd dress up a bit like a skinhead and things like that. Now, I'm no expert, and I really do have to caveat that, but that sounds like the behaviour of a schizophrenic to me. I don't have an alter ego, I'm just Suzanne Brogan. I did have a psychiatric evaluation some years later. And when I was describing the situation that I found myself in, the psychiatrist actually said, I think I'm interviewing the wrong person. If what you're telling me is true, and I can evidence everything that I say, I think it should be Mr. Stanton that's sitting in front of me. I do think you've got PTSD from a number of years of this, and I was diagnosed in April of 2018. But he thought I was very brave, because at the time I hated large crowds, and I'd gone to Birmingham New Street on Good Friday, and he thought that was incredible that I'd achieved that. But he said, if what you're telling me is true, I would suggest that Mr. Stanton is a psychopath, sociopath, possibly schizophrenic, certainly narcissistic. And the list just went on and on. I can't remember all the what would be diagnosis if he'd actually seen him himself. So yes, he was, I believe, and I can't prove this, I believe he tried to run me off the road on 3 separate occasions. He certainly sent me threatening text messages and emails, both from his work email address, his personal email address, and his mobile phone. He was warned by Malcolm Roberts that if that continued, he would be arrested. And then I started getting threatening text messages from what appeared to be a burner phone. Revenge is sweet with patience, time to strike back, watch your back lady, I'm coming for you, and things like that. And then, as say, I've got CCTV on my house, so I believed he was intelligent enough to pay somebody to do it. And because he was very well disguised, when I first saw the CCTV, I didn't recognise him. Then I blew it up on my big screen TV.
And then you turned into Sherlock Holmes.
I recognised his gait. I'd sat outside of his office for the best part of 5 years. And I offered to pay for gait analysis if he would supply some CCTV. He supplied seconds. His car number plate was caught coming into Kettering on the ANPR cameras approximately 20 minutes before both counts of criminal damage. And the excuses he made to the court were verging on ridiculous. He thought I had probably stolen his car, or I'd got somebody else to get a number plate made up. He had a cherished number plate, get a cherished number plate made up and put it on another black Range Rover. So much so that the judges were laughing at him. It was, sorry, the magistrates were laughing at him. It was verging on ridiculous. And yes, they found him guilty, and they complimented me, if that's the right word, on giving clear, concise and credible information, whereas he offered the court no credibility whatsoever. I wish I could say that was the end of the story.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Is all this over now?
He's been quiet. He's been quiet since March 2 years ago, but he broke the restraining order. I got a lifetime restraining order. He had that broken 5 times in the first week. Nothing happens to him. I don't know if it is because he is a multimillionaire. I don't know if he's a Freemason. Those things I don't know, or whether it's just lazy, incompetent, or corrupt policing.
It's always lazy and incompetence.
Yeah, okay. It was, yeah, I think, well, the lazy and incompetence allows the corruption to carry on, but there you go. That's my view, just to caveat that. I was very critical of the police and the CPS, not all police officers, but a lot of them have no clue what stalking looks like and how it affects people who are victims of stalking. It changes your whole life. I mean, I'm a lot stronger now, but for a long time, I would not go to Market Harborough. I was physically terrified that he was going to kill me. I remember phoning the police one day when I was in the house on my own, and I'd had yet another threatening text message. And I remember phoning the police saying, is there any way you could get somebody out? I phoned my husband, he'll be back shortly. But, you know, have you got a passing officer that can just sit with me for a few minutes? And I was told they weren't my personal police officers. I was sobbing down the phone. I was so scared. I remember running into the kitchen and just thinking, what could I use if he comes for me, you know, to protect myself? I hadn't learned self-defense at that stage. Now I carry a ballpoint pen everywhere. It's always in my back pocket. Got one here, brilliant for self-defense. And it's not an offensive weapon, obviously. But my house is like Fort Knox. And I'd had CCTV. I improved my CCTV. I've got more cameras of CCTV. I've got an alarm. I've got a panic room and things like that. So although my life has changed, I decided that I stopped being as hyper vigilant when I went out. The protests have been brilliant for that. I'm not scared of crowds anymore. Um, and this myth, or I had the idea that, you know, I think I was 44 years old, you wouldn't get a stalker at that age. That's rubbish. It's not just celebrities. It's not just rich, famous, beautiful people that attract the eyes of stalkers or weirdos or whatever you want to call them. Um, I thought you'd have to be really pretty, really attractive, and I'm neither, but I still attracted it. Now, whether that is because I caused him quite a lot of bother with O2 and things like that, whether it's because I spoke to the press. There was a journalist called James Pearce who wrote at the time for the Mobile News, and he'd written a piece about the police being able to access your mobile phone records. And it was good, but it was factually incorrect. And I said, O2 have given Centre of Excellence partners all this information without any of the scrutiny that the police have to go through. You know, I understand if the police want to see your phone records, they have to have just cause. But O2 had just given that to everybody. And I think the intention was good. It's so we could do reviews and recommend better tariffs and things like that. But when you've got a rogue company and a rogue board of directors who abuse that.
You've just given them loads and loads of power.
Yeah, and I complained to the ICO. They were, in my opinion, useless. They said it wasn't my data, it was O2's data, which is probably true in law. But again, they took no action. O2 did make them spend quite a lot of money in improving their data security and things like that, whether he was annoyed about that, whether he was annoyed that I'd won quite a lot of business away from them. Who knows? I really have no clue. It's
and there's no point trying to work out why a nutcase is a nutcase. You can't work out why.
Drive me mad if I tried, so I don't. But so I decided that I was giving him more power by not going to Market Harborough and avoiding areas that I thought he would be. So, I don't know, probably about 5 years ago, I said to my husband between Christmas and New Year, can we go to Harborough? I made sure I was seen. I made sure word got back to him that I was in Harbs and that he has no power over me now. And I'm not scared. In fact, he should be scared of me. I mean, I had a small telecoms business myself for a short period of time, and I really wasn't very good at running it. I didn't enjoy running it, and I was looking to sell the business. And I had a meeting with somebody who we got on fantastically well, blah, blah, blah. And it was agreed in principle that I would work, I'd sell my business, I'd stay there for a period of time, but I wanted to meet the sales manager. And when I went to Peterborough to meet the sales manager, he said to me, why did you do this to Chris Stanton? And I said, what is your perception of what I've done to Chris Stanton? All I did was help make him a very wealthy man, not single-handedly, but as part of the management team. And he said, you destroyed his reputation. And I knew then I couldn't work there. And I said, I spoke to the press because I had the press outside my house. I spoke to my solicitor to see if I could, because there was a settlement agreement, but it was a repudiatory breach. So yes, I could. And then I spoke to Susie Lampley Trust and asked if I should, and they said yes. If I know you're coming out of your comfort zone, they were fantastic. So were Paladin, actually, who gave me advocacy. But they said the more people who knows what he looks like, the safer you become. And that made logical sense to me. And that is why I spoke to the press. It wasn't about revenge or any of those things. And I mean, my solicitors are PJH Law, Philip Highland, excellent employment law solicitors. And they say my story is a thing of folklore now, because they've never had a case of workplace bullying that went as far as mine. And they see some pretty horrific cases. But yeah, it's so as I complained about Welcome Communications solicitors contacting me once the restraining order had been issued. The subject line was intended court action. I sent it straight over to Philip and said, what do I do with this? And he took them down in 5 sharp emails. But I was so disgusted that the police and the courts were not interested that he'd broken the restraining order. And I think, I mean, we all know the British judiciary is broken in places, but I didn't realise. If you'd have said to me 10 years ago, Nick, you will question everything. You know, I wanted, as when I was growing up, I wanted to be a police officer. And the understanding or lack of understanding is shambolic. I know areas of the law better than the police do. I stood in local elections last year. I went to the count, and the 2 Northamptonshire police officers said to me, Madam, where's your mask? I said, I'm exempt. Show me your exemption. That breaches the Equality Act 2010.
And there's no such thing as an exemption, as in a certificate.
No, I know that. And then they followed me around the count, and I turned around and I said, right, and I was a little rude, so I won't swear, but if you flippers don't leave me alone, I'll phone 999 and report you for harassment and intimidation as Section 2 offence. And they actually said to me, what does that mean? And I said, flipping heck, I know the law better than you. And then they threatened to arrest me for breach of the peace, no victim, no crime. It was just, I think the last 3 years has made a lot of police officers power hungry, power crazy. Had they arrested me, I would have, it would have been an unlawful arrest anyway, but I would have taken that a lot further. But I did complain, and I did complain to the Equality Commission.
Yeah. So how are you now?
I'm really well. I still have difficulty in staying asleep. I go to sleep fine, but I do have insomnia quite often. But I'm still standing. I've survived nearly 10 years. Well, if you consider the 5 years of bullying as well while I was actually at work, I've survived 15 years. So if it hasn't broken me by now, it's not going to. There have been times where I've been in really, really dark places. And do you know, and I've actually written a book about this subject. But I used to see when people, and especially children, took their own lives, and I could never understand it. But then suddenly, when I was in this position, I did, because then I thought, at least I get to control it, at least, because when he was at his most prolific, it was the fear of the unknown. It was the fear of what he was going to do and when he was going to do it. And I did think, you know, I now understand if somebody's being bullied that badly and they're fearing for their life, yes, you know, control it. And that was a really sad realization. But I'm not there now. I'm happy. I've got the best husband in the world, in my opinion. He always wanted to go and talk to Chris Stanton. I was always so worried that it wouldn't end up a conversation. They're both former military. It would have ended up a fight, and the only way I could stop him was to say, look, Paul, if you get arrested, I'm on my own. And it took a heck of a lot of will on his part not to go over, because of course your natural reaction is you want to protect somebody, don't you? But if anything, this has made us a lot stronger. I stopped for a time telling him what was going on because he would get really angry, so I was dealing with it a lot myself. But he knows now everything that happened, and he freely accepts it.
Let's end on this. So let's end on, what is the advice you would give somebody who is in a similar situation to what you've been through? What is the advice, the learning that you want to give them?
I would recommend that you study areas of the law so you know them inside out. So harassment, intimidation, stalking. You only need two things to happen to you that make you feel uncomfortable or fearful for harassment and intimidation to come into effect. Harassment, intimidation, section 2 offence is no fear of violence. Section 4 offence is fear of violence. And quote it to the police officers, and always make sure you've got legal expenses cover on your insurance policies, because that gave me access to a lot of legal advice that was very helpful. And just know that you will come out of it stronger. Yes, they break you for a time. And find me on LinkedIn if you find yourself in that situation. Suzanne Brogan, my hair's a lot shorter in my LinkedIn photo, but please contact me if you're going through something similar, because I can support you. There are people out there like the Susie Lampley Trust, Paladin. We can help you, and we're happy to support both emotionally and with legal information.
Oh, fantastic. So anyone out there who needs help, have a look in the description of this video. There'll be links there about how you can contact Suzanne, and the article will be in there as well. Thank you for coming on and talking about this subject, because it's one of those things we've all heard of, but we rarely know someone who's been through it. And you're right, sometimes we just think it's Hollywood stars, and we need to protect people better from this sort of horrendous crime. We do.
Thanks ever so much, Nick. Sorry, the sun's shining through now, and mind you, I'm not moaning.
Thank you, and I'll speak to you soon.
Speak soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.